What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, and today we've got something fun. We are taking this 1987 Goldwing here, the Raspberry Buffet, and we're giving it the day in the saddle treatment to see whether or not this 36-year-old motorcycle can keep up with modern cruisers. Let's find out. Okay, alright, I know what's already being typed in the comments. Spite, you stupid millennial, of course it can handle modern twisty roads, of course it can handle the highway. But I would argue that nowadays, the cruiser marketplace, with bikes as expensive as they are meant to be superlative. They're meant to be the best of the best. And yes, this thing did set the standard back before I was born. But the question is, can it keep up with bikes with all of their modern electronics, cruise control, fully adjustable active suspension, all of that good stuff? That is the whole point of today's episode. Not to say whether or not this is a good motorcycle, because we know it's already good, but is it still great today? That's the real question. Now, before I ramble on too much further, I want to point out that I'm not keeping this motorcycle right here. Shade Tree and I have teamed up to give away this bike for the Forgotten Angels. If you guys aren't aware, that is a charity down there in Florida that is helping kids who are aging out of the foster care system, who are basically left with no future and nothing but a garbage bag full of all of their belongings, and they're cast out into the streets. Forgotten Angels is giving these kids the tools to build theirself a real future. And that is 100% a charity I wanted to throw my weight behind ever since I heard about it. I'm so happy I can help out with it now. And since I've seen it a handful of times in the description down below, yes, that link that's down there that is to get entered to win will take you to a $250,000 dream house. That's the right link. I'm not just putting it down there for shits and giggles. That is going to get you entered to win not only this motorcycle, but that $250,000 grand prize. You are going to get entered to win both. However, today is the last day that you can get entered to win this thing, and your time is running out. We're actually going to be giving it away over on Shade Tree Surgeon's channel a little bit later on in the afternoon. So you've got to go get yourself your entries to win, and every single dollar that you spend getting yourself entered to win this or the $250,000 dream house, I don't see a penny of it. Shade Tree Surgeon doesn't see a penny of it. It all goes to support the Forgotten Angels. Now, with that being said, let's get this thing out in the twisties and see whether or not it can still hang.
Now, I've been riding this thing around quite a bit. I took it through some seriously twisty roads on my way back through Arkansas and Oklahoma. A lot of that was actually after dark, which made for kind of a sketchy experience on this, I'm not gonna lie. However, I wanted to bring it to a road I know really, really well. It's the standard squid spot here in Austin, Texas. But I figured I'd take the wing out here because if it can handle a squid road, it can handle anything. And, you know, I gotta say, it's not as bad as I was expecting it to be. I know, damning with fine praise, right? But let me justify that a little bit. So, first of all, the suspension is older than I am. The fact that it's still puttering along at what I would consider a relatively spirited pace through a lot of these corners, it's pretty impressive. I will also note that this air ride suspension, I have no way of confirming whether or not it's set up right. These bikes are very, very sensitive to changes in the suspension geometry. Even tire pressure can affect the way that the suspension works. So, especially with stuff like anti-dive and all of that we don't see on modern bikes, because our valving is better and our suspension is bigger, there is a fair bit of looseness to the handling, especially as you start to get it further and further on its the side of the tire. I'm also willing to bet that the rubber that's on here is much like the battery, not exactly of the highest stock, shall we say. However, one thing I am noticing about the Goldwing is the more body English you put behind your turns, the better it handles because it stays more upright. So going through a corner like this, if I lean a little bit, you know, I'm not talking about like dragging my knee or anything, but if I use my upper body to just knock off a couple of degrees of lean, the bike handles a lot better. So it's not exactly this passive riding experience where you just, you know, are perfectly ramrod upright and scoot down the road. If you want to get after it, you really do need to put a little bit of body English in. Now, since we're on a twisty road, let's address the braking performance on this bike. So I've been pretty outspoken about how much I don't like the brakes on this thing. However, I have been riding it around more since I put Whitney on here. And the front brake, it's not that it doesn't work, guys. It's not that it doesn't work. It just doesn't work relative to modern dual disc setups. Even single discs, the brake on my KLR outperforms the brake on this. But think about it. We've got calipers from 36 years ago on big, heavy rotors that don't breathe. And this is a heavy motorcycle. So it makes sense that the braking performance may not exactly be up to snuff. However, the rear brakes, because it's actuating front and rear, it handles a lot better if you need to stop quick, fast, and in a hurry. But if you just need to bleed off a little bit of speed and sort of preload your front end for a corner, the front brake works fine. Just don't try to panic stop with that front brake because it's not going to be able to slow you down. Last thing I want to talk about in this segment here is the motor's performance. How does it handle the twisty road, the sort of spirited riding? It's fine. It's fine. Is it the most thrilling motor in the world? No, it absolutely isn't. But it does have enough torque to get you up and out of a corner in a relatively spirited fashion. As we put some gas on here, you know, you can get it up and moving. Its torque is not as low down, and we'll come back to that in a little bit later. And it doesn't make a ton of power. It made a ton of power for back in the day, but by today's standards, 94 horsepower just ain't gonna cut it. So that's worth considering. Not that I think that a lot of people are getting on a Goldwing for its blistering top end punch. But that does give me a good segue into the specs on this machine. So let's pull it over and see what we're working with here.
So some specs on this barge. This thing has an 1182cc Boxer 4 motor in it that's putting down 94 horsepower and 77 foot-pounds of torque. Now, you're either gonna find yourself falling on the side of that is plenty of power for a bike like this and I don't need any more, or like me, you're gonna fall on the side of this isn't enough power out of this motorcycle. And the reason why I say that, this thing weighs 728 pounds dry, especially if you start loading it up with a bunch of extra stuff in the back. You're hitting the road, you're filling all 3 boxes with clothes, and you're putting your boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, son, daughter on the back of this motorcycle. You are easily going to start pushing close to 1,000 pounds, rider included. But let's mount up on this thing and talk a little bit about the ergonomics. Now, it is worth pointing out that this seat is not stock. This is a Saddleman seat. You're never gonna find one of these motorcycles bone stock. In the last 30 years, the owner is going to have done something to this motorcycle, and seats are usually a pretty common thing. However, sitting in it, it's actually a really comfortable place to sit. I find this seat is pushing me a little far forward. I'd like to sit a little bit further back, but I love where the foot pegs are. It's super duper comfortable. The reach to the handlebars is about as relaxed as you get. It feels like an adventure bike. I love how neutral the seating stance is. And speaking of adventure bike, I'm sure this is gonna cut off my head, but I'm gonna do it anyway. The standing ergos are perfect on this thing. You can literally stand on it with no modifications. And I am 6'4" in my boots with a 32-inch inseam. Now let's take a second and talk about the pros and cons on this motorcycle. First thing, The engine is buttery smooth. You basically, when you're rolling down the road, it feels like you're on a magic carpet. It's a really, really comfortable place to sit, but the bad side of the engine is it feels a little bit underwhelming nowadays. It doesn't need to be super powered. I don't need like 150 horsepower. But when I get on a cruiser, I really like to feel torque. Another pro for this motorcycle has to be the handling. I know we just got done talking about it, but I'm gonna mention it again. The flickability on this motorcycle is kind of shocking. It dips in way faster than it has any right to. In fact, I think it dips in faster than a lot of modern cruisers. Now, another con on this that is actually something you're just gonna have to deal with on this motorcycle, this windshield does a phenomenal job. This fairing does a phenomenal job. In fact, I would say it's too good. There's no way when you're sitting behind this windscreen, especially in the Texas heat, that you don't end up boiling on this bike. It is very, very warm when you're not going fast. If you're not cruising on the highway, you're not getting any wind behind this windshield. And the engine actually produces a solid amount of heat. Last thing I am gonna mention on this motorcycle is that this is a carbureted motorcycle with a whole bunch of gizmos and gewgaws and doohickeys and all sorts of stuff on there. It's gonna be hard to find one that has everything that's working, and if you need to address the carburetors on one of these motorcycles, good luck. This thing, it runs great, but if you find one that doesn't, you're gonna have to work for it. You really, really are. Now, with all of that being said, let's get this thing out on the highway, get it in its happy place, and see how it stacks up against the modern cruisers out there.
Alrighty, pulling away on the highway is definitely where the Goldwing wants to be. It is so happy on the highway. It is the ultimate little mile muncher, and the fact that you can get a bike like this for $2,500 and literally ride across the country, that's pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie, I can't believe that this thing is still as effective as it is at doing this. The biggest plus on the highway has to be the ergonomics package on this motorcycle. If you're a Harley rider, I highly recommend that you sit on a motorcycle that has the foot pegs actually underneath your butt, because when your feet are out here like this, all of your weight goes to sitting on your butt. It all goes on your sitting bones, because your feet are basically supporting the weight of everything below your knees, which isn't that much body weight. Everything else is just going right on your ass, and you could get the comfiest seat in the world, and it's not going to do it for you. However, having your feet underneath you allows you to essentially cushion your body weight a little bit more, and it's just a more intelligent place to put your feet. I really wish that Harley had foot pegs like this. Modern Harleys need to have foot pegs like this. It's a very sport touring mindset. I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's very much an adventure bike setup. And I think ADV bikes are the most comfortable motorcycle on the planet. Now, it's not all good for the Goldwing. Let me show you its passing power. So we're currently in overdrive. So this technically has 5 forward gears, 4 major power gears, and then overdrive, which is just, it allows you to cruise highway speed. So we're gonna drop down to 4th gear, which is an actual power gear, and I'm gonna try to pass this car. So it's not that it doesn't speed up. It's just that it's not nearly as snappy as you'd think from a bike with 94 horsepower and 77 foot-pounds of torque. It definitely is down to the fact that this thing weighs as much as it does. This motor's just not putting down enough power to really compensate for the weight. Don't get me wrong, it's not a slow motorcycle, but it's not nearly as potent as modern engines. Whether that's a problem for you you're gonna have to be the judge of that. I prefer a little bit more torque. Like here I'm in overdrive, and you really gotta wait. You need to shift out of overdrive if you're gonna try to pass anyone on the highway, and we're not going all that fast. I don't know specifically how fast we're going, but this is a 65-mile-an-hour highway, and I'd reckon I'm probably doing about 70 to maybe 75. Last thing I am going to mention here about the Goldwing on the highway. I know we're being brief, but frankly, everything on this motorcycle is so good as to not bear mentioning, because it's still the same on the modern Goldwings. But one problem with this bike, the tank is kind of small, and I don't think it's getting that much range. I don't know specifically, because again, the odometer doesn't work because the speedometer doesn't work, and they're linked. So it's hard for me to know exactly how much we're getting out of it, but I can tell you right now, it's not a significant amount of range. Maybe like 150 miles. It's kind of a small tank. I was down to 2 bars on this, and I put in about 3.8 gallons. It's kind of like a naked bike tank, frankly. A modern naked bike, anyway. So, as far as modern tourers go, at highway speed, this thing is going to need to stop more often. That doesn't bother me at all, but it does bear repeating. Also, the last thing, this motorcycle, it comes equipped with the Tactical Assault Cat, which is awesome, but there is no Tactical Assault cup holder on here. That is very disturbing to me. In fact, I may have to go onto the most hallowed ground of motorcycle parts distributors, Amazon.com, and see if I can find myself a cup holder for this motorcycle, because it feels incomplete without one. With that being said, let's pull this motorcycle over and see if the Discord boys have any questions about my majestic steed here.
Alrighty folks, if this is the first time you're tuning in for one of these reviews, this is the part of the review where I turn it over to the Discord. I ask them to send me whatever questions they have, and I try to answer as many of them as I possibly can in about 5 or 6 minutes. And if you would like to participate in some of these reviews going forward, the link is down in the description below. You can join the Patreon. It is the best way for you to support the channel. You'll be able to participate in some of these reviews, maybe win some free stuff. All of that fun stuff is down in the description below. Let's dive on in with the first question. How many pairs of New Balance does the Goldwing come with? It doesn't come with any in the box. I'm pretty sure Shade Tree Surgeon has them at his place. But you basically need to be going out and buying yourself a pair if you wanna wear the uniform. Full Metal Corgi, does the Goldwing come with Insure Plus, a sewing tin full of hard candies, and strong opinions about millennials? Yes. On a serious note, what's one feature of the Goldwing you'd like to see brought back on modern motorcycles? So this is something that's actually a really good question here. This bike set the trend back in the day for what became modern cruising motorcycles. So we basically took everything from this motorcycle that was awesome. We took everything that hit and we kept it, and then we eliminated all of the bullshit. Certainly the carburetors we don't need anymore. However, it would be kind of neat to bring back the onboard compressor so that you could air up your own tires. It's neat that this thing has it. I don't like the air ride suspension. That's too complicated. But I would like to see onboard compressors come back. That'd be neat. Burger, given the choice of picking up an older tourer and fixing it up versus buying one new, which would I personally go with? Assuming that the bike I'm looking at runs and rides, I would go with the running and riding one versus a newer one, because these big touring bikes are so expensive, and the beauty of these old bikes is with a little attention to detail, you can get yourself a really nice motorcycle cheap. However, if it does not run, or the owner says it starts but doesn't keep running, you're gonna have carburetor troubles, and I would rather jump off a cliff than work on the carburetors on one of these bikes. White and blue, Spite, is it possible to fit a tent, coffee machine, and a washing machine on the bike for long camping tours? And on that note, how well do you think the Goldwing would handle a fire road to get to that campsite. Well, I'm actually basically on a fire road right now. It would handle it just fine. Again, the standing ergos are shockingly good on this thing. So yeah, you'd be able to goof around off-road pretty easily. I wouldn't do anything that requires actual suspension travel or ground clearance, but a fire road is fine. And as far as packing stuff on this bike, you have so much room. You can cram a ton of stuff on this. Summit Coyote, would you daily it or would it sit and wait for long trips only? Also, is it too comfortable? As in, does it lack the feel and response many riders want when riding it? Does it feel disconnected from the road? Okay, first thing, yeah, I would absolutely daily it. I think this is probably, if you're just looking for the most practical motorcycle in the world, this is it. Now, as far as too comfortable and disconnected from the road, I would argue that Goldwing riders are okay with that. They're okay with feeling that disconnected from the road because it's essentially a two-wheeled car. So it can be a little bit dull from time to time because you're not super engaged in the riding experience. But I think that's kind of the point. In a similar vein, Patzilla asking, riding a Goldwing and bikes like it feel like it would be a sterile experience since they're the ultimate cross-country touring bike. Are they still a fun experience, just in a different way? Yes, yeah, this is a fun experience. It's not about riding quickly. It's not about doing the sporty thing. It can get a little bit sporty, just a little bit, but certainly not like you're gonna try to drag pegs around a corner or anything like that. It does ask you to behave a little bit more. Feels like you need to be more respectful of the motorcycle and the road and yourself and sit up straight and, you know, don't put your elbows on the table. But there's definitely a place for that. And with that, let's talk about that whole disconnected experience, what it means for me and what it means for this motorcycle relative to the competition out there.
So I think it's fair to say that a lot of my quibbles with this motorcycle, and I would call them quibbles, a lot of the issues that I have, they're smaller problems. They're not these big sweeping issues that I think undermine the whole platform, you know. I'm willing to deal with some jankiness on this bike. To give you an idea, the transmission's a little bit clunky, and it does the thing that the Groms do, where when you go down to first, it still allows the lever to move up and down. Again, it's fair to say that a lot of the issues are due to age, and we've improved upon a lot of those issues and basically created better versions because of the lessons we learned here. Is this thing still the superlative motorcycle riding experience on two wheels? Is it the best of the best? No. The modern Goldwing is. Now the question then becomes, is it still worth owning one of these motorcycles, or should you just spend the cash and get the better modern new stuff? Well, that's a tougher question. I don't think that this motorcycle is lacking enough features over the modern motorcycles in the segment to say, no, you have to get a new one. This 87 is still crushing it out here, man. And if I were to spend some time to bleed and perhaps rebuild the calipers, put new brakes on here, my issue with the front brake, it wouldn't be completely solved, mind you. It wouldn't be completely solved, but it would be better. If I were to put better rubber on here, the handling would improve. If I were to attend to the forks, the handling would improve. If I were to go in and fix some of the stuff on the dash, everything would probably start working. It's probably just blown fuses or maybe some rat chew on some wires that happened throughout the years. Do I wish it had more power? Do I wish it had more torque? Yes. Do I wish that the steering didn't wobble at 35 miles an hour, which is apparently a quirk of the Goldwing? Yeah. But none of those issues are deal breakers for me. And especially at the price that you can get one of these at, if they are running, go buy one. Just don't think go buy. You can find room in your garage, just barely, to fit something like this in there, because it's a giant motorcycle. But it's still an excellent motorcycle, even all these years later. Is this the greatest street motorcycle of all time? No, the modern Goldwing is. But this is still a pretty damn fine street bike, and I'm gonna be really sad when I have to give it away. I really enjoy this thing. It's a ton of fun. It's a little sterile, I'm not gonna lie. I have fun with it because of its wonkiness, but I do see it as being perhaps just a skosh boring. You know, it's a Honda. What do you expect? And remember, guys, I am not keeping this motorcycle right here. Shade Tree and I have teamed up to give away the Raspberry Buffet here for the second time for Forgotten Angels. We're trying to use this motorcycle's second lease on life to give kids in Florida a future, and we're trying to expand. They. I've just only recently jumped on the bandwagon, but it's so easy to be like, yeah, oh, I'm so helpful. No, they're really trying to expand that operation, and it is a charity that is worth your time. If you want to get entered to win, click that link down below. Every dollar that you spend on entries is going to go to Forgotten Angels. They're going to help give kids a future who would otherwise not have one. And if that's not worth spending some cash on, I don't know what is. And remember, guys, that link down there is going to take you to a $250,000 dream house. That is the right link. You buy your tickets there to get entered to win that dream house. You are also entered to win this bike at the same time. And you've only got a few hours left to get entered to win this thing. We're going to be giving it away live over on Shade Tree Surgeon's channel in a couple of hours. So make sure you get it in while the getting's good. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.